sleep through every day. Wine has gotta take my friends away.
Sam hates today. There isn't a single redeemable thing about it. The worst thing about today is that next year, when today repeats itself, it'll be her day. So maybe the one almost redemptive thing about today is that it isn't her day yet, but that only means that she's one day closer to it. She wishes she could go back to bed and wake up next week when the wickedness of today will be long gone. But Sam recognizes that if her stupid wish could be granted, it can't. She knows it can't, but still. What the reality of going back to bed and waking up next week would mean was that she'd miss out on saying goodbye to the 18-year-old Sams. On the one hand, she wouldn't be forced into witnessing the unveiling of the results from today's awful tests, and obviously she'd be grateful if that could happen. But on the other hand, the more important hand, she wouldn't be able to have a final farewell. And if it's one thing Sam knows for sure, it's that once the 18-year-old Sams get on that bus and the metal gates of the camp open and the bus drives out and the metal gates close, she's never going to see any of those Sams ever again. She'd say this was the cruelest part about camp, but it's not. It's just part of its natural ecosystem. The alarm hasn't sounded yet, but all around her, Sams are awake. Everyone knows what today means. Sam isn't special. If it's one other thing Sam knows for sure, it's that she isn't special. There's a logical inconsistency to the rhetoric of camp. No Sam is special. Every Sam is the same. Once upon a time, their mothers had chosen to murder them and then left the dirty work of disposing their fetal bodies to someone else. But by miracle or by grace, they were saved, given a second chance. And it was the President of the United States, the 45th of his title, who put life back into their dead cells. Okay, maybe it wasn't the president himself who managed the real science that resurrection required over 3 decades back, but that's just a technicality. Now, 30 years later, Sams don't pray to any god at all. But every morning, after they pledge allegiance to a flag that rejects them as citizens, they must chant an ode to the 45th President of the United States to express their unwavering gratitude for the opportunity he alone gave them to live again. Every single Sam is reminded daily that there's absolutely nothing special about them, which is something that used to confuse Sam when she was younger. Like, why would the actual president choose them in particular to save if they're not special? Now that she's 17, camp has erased her capacity to question. But when she first arrived here, she asked an overlooker about this contradiction. If Sams were chosen by someone as infallible and powerful as the president, doesn't it mean they're special? Aren't those words synonymous? You want special, Overlooker Thompson had said. Sam didn't say anything. She just looked at the other Sams, but everyone else's eyes shifted away until they all landed facing front, as they'd been trained to do. I asked you a question, Sam. Sam didn't know the correct protocol. How old are you, Sam? Sam's eyes hurt from working so hard to not cry. She put all her attention to looking directly in front of her. Overlooker Thompson pushed the chair of his desk backwards and stood up. He cleared his throat. Class, it seems that Sam here has gotten herself into a little problem. She's clean forgotten how old she is. Can anyone here tell me how old you all are? The overlooker scanned the room. Sam, row 3, seat B, how old are you? Sam from row 3, seat B stood up. 5 years old, sir. He sat back down. Sam, row 7, seat D. Sam stood up. Yes, sir. Present. Tell me, do you want to be special? No, sir. And why not? I don't know, sir. Everyone knew that Sam from row 7, seat D, was the weakest among them, the most prone to tears when he had to speak, and the overlooker knew this too. The overlooker stood like a tower over Sam. This was meant to be torture, but Sam hadn't done anything wrong. This was all Sam's fault, and now the overlooker was punishing Sam for her crimes. It was too much. The injustice. Sam stood up, even though her name wasn't called. Please, Overlooker Thompson, please don't punish Sam. I said this stupid thing. I was wrong, please. I don't think I'm special. It was wrong of me to think that, please, sir. Sit down, Sam. This isn't about you. That's your problem, isn't it? You think everything is all about you. I was asking Sam here a question, and he's going to answer it, aren't you, Sam? Sam's breath got hard and uneven. His face was ruddy from trying not to cry. Sam, I'm talking to you. You need to answer me now. I don't know, sir, he heaved out. No? Well, don't say I didn't give you the opportunity to save yourself, to save both of you. The overlooker went back to his desk and sat down. Sam and Sam, come to the front. Even though everyone in the room was named Sam, they didn't need clarification as to which Sams the overlooker meant. He grinned. Sam, row 12, seat F. Sir, walk these Sams downstairs. Tell Overlooker Bates to give these Sams 7 full days for insubordination. Sam gulped, all of them. And then the 2 guilty Sams and the 1 teacher's pet walked downstairs. This was the first time either Sam had been sent to isolation. And Sam had promised herself she would never earn such a punishment again. But punishments were neither earned nor just. And even though that very first isolation had broken Sam, it had also fixed her. This was all part of the lesson. This was how she was taught. The alarm sounds and 5 sharp blasts. Within 60 seconds, every Sam is standing alert by her bunk. Beds made, uniforms buttoned. Today begins. Sam stands in line because that's what a Sam does best, stand in line. At least she doesn't have to pose like when she's at attention. Her shoulders flop forward. No matter how short they crop her hair, it manages to find itself in tangles. There are only 2 Sams in front of her, but she doesn't think she can hold her pee that long. Hey, Sam? Her voice is mousy and tentative, and she's annoyed by how meager she must seem. It's not her fault. It's not like she wants to sound this way, and she's tried, like a lot, to change it. She can make it deeper, but she can't sustain the timbre for more than 5 or 6 words before falling back into her normal squeakiness. Either the Sam in front of her didn't hear her, or maybe she didn't know she was being addressed for obvious reasons, so Sam taps her shoulder lightly. What? Both her voice and her face snap. Sam's natural inclination should be to coil, but that's been trained out of her. Despite the accretions of her bladder, so inflamed that she feels a literal burning, she says, how'd you sleep? You know, big day and all that. I had so many nightmares right in a row that I wouldn't let myself sleep anymore. Yeah, I feel you, Sam says, much nicer than before. She's only 15 though. Sam knows she can't actually understand what today means, but she doesn't say anything to contradict her attempt at empathy. Sam wishes he didn't have to use the trough, but all the real toilets are occupied. He wouldn't admit it to anyone, ever, but when he's at the trough, he feels this compulsion to compare peckers. He knows that they get bigger, and there's no actual correlation between their natural state and their non-natural state, but he can't prevent himself from imagining how each one grows, both taller and wider, a sure sign of vitality, virility, and strength, and pure manhood. Like this, his pecker is exactly the same as all the other boy Sams. When he thinks naughty things about girls, it doesn't change at all. That's what makes him so weird. The thing is, when he thinks naughty things about peckers, it does change. It's nothing glorious, but he's fine with it. Sam knows that no one in camp would judge him for this, but part of him believes, like really believes, that there's something very wrong with him. He doesn't know if it's a brain problem or a body problem or just a pecker problem, but somewhere in him, there's a problem, and he wishes it would go away. All the Sams are lined up outside the mess hall, thousands of them between the ages of 5 and 18. They're all wearing their normal fatigue uniforms. E3s with rifles walk along the line, periodically pausing to point his weapon at a Sam. The double doors unlock and open from the inside, and the Sams enter in silence and with order, one by one, as they have been trained to do. Even though today is a monumental day for the 18-year-old Sams, the rest of the Sams are expected to continue with their lessons and daily tasks like it's any ordinary day. The morning meal feels spectacularly somber to Sam. As a rule, they aren't allowed to talk during meals, but they always manage to pass notes or pantomime, especially important messages to one another. This morning, however, the silence feels particularly superficial and cruel. Sam can hear teeth breaking down the food, dry biscuits and powdered eggs and orange drink. It's so quiet that his metal fork makes an enormous sound when it dives into the scrambled eggs. The last thing Sam wants to do is eat, but he also knows that he must. If he doesn't finish all his food, he'll be written up for insubordination, and knowing his good luck, they'll just send him off with the 18-year-olds to get tested a year early. Sam pushes as much food as he can into his mouth and swallows it with some orange drink. He feels sick, but he keeps on eating. Usually there are only overlookers watching them during meals, but today a bunch of E3s are here too. They aren't eating, just watching. Sam used to admire the E3s. They used to be heroic figures to him. Sam didn't have a father, none of the Sams do, and he didn't have a mother either. He wasn't ever sad for not having a mother, whereas he spent most of his childhood wistful for a strong masculine role model. In class, he was taught that Uncle Sam was the only father who would never abandon them and would always love them. They're hardly worthy of Uncle Sam's devotion to them, so it's their responsibility to make him proud, to work harder and be stronger, to be the best Sam they can. The other Sams accepted this line, but Sam couldn't make sense of it. He wanted to, and he tried to, he really did, but he just wasn't smart like the other Sams. So instead, he convinced himself that the E3s were Uncle Sam in disguise. Like any one of them might actually be the real Uncle Sam. And so he'd better be the absolute best Sam he could if an E3 was around, so he wouldn't be a total disappointment to his father. This went on for many years, and Sam never told anyone else about it. At first, it was because he was embarrassed, but then it became so normal to his thinking that he started to see a familial resemblance between the E3s and himself. Many times, he endured harsh punishments for failure to properly address an E3 as sir. He stood there with a dopey look while they used the blunt end of a rifle to beat him. Sam was too busy daydreaming about playing catch with his dad. The E3s interpreted this as an act of disrespect, which only increased the severity of their punishment. It took the better part of a year for Sam to stop fooling himself, and the epiphany was as difficult to accept as it was an irrefutable fact. Of course, he'd been taught the story of his life, the circumstances of his birth, and the sacrifice he would have to make when he turns 18 to repay the debt to his country. He knew all that. He understood what it meant to be named Sam. But still, he really thought the E3s were his father until he was in US history when he was 16. It was a lesson on the Civil War, and in the pictures were people who looked like him being hung from trees. In the pictures, people who looked like the E3s made angry faces at the people who were hanging. This was Sam's very first confrontation with race. Sam might not have been the smartest or even keen, But just seeing one photograph in his history textbook, he recognized where he came from. He understood lineage and blood, and Sam had never heard of intergenerational trauma or anything like that, but he felt it. It felt like rage. The E3s were not heroic protectors. The beautiful fantasy narrative he had spent his whole life constructing was smashed, and suddenly Sam was angry, very angry. The camp was like a big farm, and the Sams were big, dumb cows. He looked around the room and saw placid faces and passive bodies, and when they turned 18, war was going to eat them all. The camp as a structure has many flaws, but there was one positive social development that the original designers had not anticipated. Within the camp, there is a strict hierarchy. The military rules, and Sams are equal in their powerlessness. Every single Sam's biological mother had chosen abortion. Every single Sam was vacuumed out and covertly stored in a refrigerator somewhere. And then the 45th president of the United States saved them with the blessing of the Supreme Court, of course. He gave them a new belly to gestate in, and when they were born, they were named Sam and brought to camp to live as one happy family. They would grow up in these camps with food and shelter and military education and military training. When they turned 18, they will do their country proud. They will fight on the front lines of America's wars. They will be the first line of attack, and they will be the first to fall. But before that, within the space of the camp, every Sam understands that their mothers had killed them first, and their country will kill them last. Death is the greatest equalizer. All Sams are the same. Race and gender and sexual orientation don't matter because when they turn 18, each and every one of them will die at war. And in this one small way, the camp is a strange utopia. When the alarm blares 6 short blasts, breakfast is over. Sam stands up and follows the other Sams out of the mess hall, depositing his trays and utensils for Sam to wash. 2 E3s are standing at attention by the double doors. Sam wishes he had the courage to start a rebellion, to take his metal tray and use it like an axe to cut off their heads. If he did this, the other Sams would follow. He knows they would. But what if they didn't? If they did, the Sams would have the advantage of numbers. E3s had guns, and it probably wouldn't take long for more guards to come, and most likely they'd all end up dead. What's the difference, Sam wonders, between dying here and dying in some war? Sam thinks through other scenarios. He's so busy chasing his dreams around that the opportunity passes right by. His tray is out of his hand, and his feet have walked out the door. The sky is beginning to crack with color, but the humidity drags a dampness right into his bones. The 18-year-old Sams are in queue, 400 of them, give or take. For just one quick second, Sam is hit with a swelling of jealousy. They get to leave. Sams never get to leave. Their entire world is the camp. The outside world, the free world, was not made for them. Or rather, Sams were not made for it. The only place a Sam belongs is in camp, until they turn 18. Sam starts laughing because these 18-year-old Sams get to go, yes, but they're going to receive a certificate that verifies that they're ready for death. Sam, an E3 yells out, you there. All the Sams turn except Sam, who is flying high in his imagination. When Sam comes to, he's no longer outside. He's not watching the 18-year-olds get on buses. He doesn't remember how he got there, but he's back down in isolation. Reflexively, he checks his head and body for damage. He winces when his fingers feel blood and split skin. He closes his eyes because he'd much prefer to return to dreaming. Thank you.
Everyone always talks about the moment in their career where they might have a big change or a big step they took in their career. And That happened in 2018 for me. I got this phone call, and it was from a label and a few high caliber artists telling me that they wanted to invest in me and share my work and start putting me in this circuit with all these other musicians. And I came with the attitude of just pure excitement. I was shivering. I couldn't keep my head on. I was just like so excited, and they were trying to be really cool with me and try to explain what was going on, and I was just overly overwhelmed. And and that is the phone call that literally changed my life, and actually started my whole music career. And so this song was written in 2020. Actually, it's being written right now. This is an improvised piece, and this is the phone call that changed my life.
The columbines nod their delicate heads as the wind blows down from Mount Evans. A cloud passes over the sun and cloaks the scene in a moment of darkness before the morning brightness resumes. Elevation 10,600 feet, breathtaking. The pines cluster in a crescent to accommodate the curve of Echo Lake on the other side of the trees. After a long winter, the water is mercurial silver. Chipmunks scurry in the branches as an eagle circles above, riding the currents of a cerulean blue Colorado sky. The clouds stretch thin. You lean against a boulder, the salmon-colored rock encrusted with green lichen and bits of mica. The chunks of quartz flash in the sunlight. The yellow police tape flutters in the breeze as it draws a circle around the scene. Do not cross. You will never again see the monstrous aloe vera plants native to your home state that grew along your driveway like so many spiky octopi. And you will never watch another sleepy alligator creep across the lawn at night or gaze up at you with its prehistoric demon eyes as you sneak a cigarette on the back deck. No more swaying palm trees. No more Everglades, no more old people everywhere, no more spring break, no more Florida man. Your backpack is where you tossed it, and despite the patches of snow that cling to the ground, you weren't cold at all when you first stripped off your clothes, scattering them in the woods like breadcrumbs as you ran a zigzag through the trees naked. But now that you've spent the night here alone, you are freezing. The hole in your heart is at once a void and a valentine, the solitary red rose you always wanted to be given, the petals unfurled where once the blood bloomed hot. This is like a new section. You check yourself in the mirror first, the one on the medicine cabinet in the Jack and Jill bathroom upstairs with 3 panels you can adjust so your reflection will repeat into infinity. You added the black lipstick and wingtip eyeliner again, even though it's not right for the role you're playing, but it's become your signature look. You're not the only one in MBK who mixes and matches themselves with the characters they play. You are all hybrids, split and divide. No one is home, but still you're jumpy. Too much caffeine and sugar, you're addicted to Starbucks, iced caramel macchiatos. You're embarrassed by how cliche that is, but at least you don't order them skinny. You've locked the bathroom doors as well as the front door downstairs and the sliding door off the kitchen deck. Then you rigged a series of booby traps throughout the house so you'll hear them coming if you lose track of time again, or if they leave early because Oliver gets sick or scared or something. Your stepmom has a lot of rules, including no shoes in the house. This is where your half-brother's Legos come in handy. Strewn about, hidden in the plush white carpet at the top of the stairs, these landmines of hard plastic are guaranteed to elicit an audible ouch if not an actual cuss word. Plus, they'll have to blame Ollie for the mess, not you. You'd feel bad if he ever actually got into trouble, but he never does. They're too focused on you. Beth calls it trying to draw Eve out of her shell. You call it the first degree. But they should be gone for hours. Tonight is family night. According to the contract you made with Joy, the family therapist, you're supposed to be with them too, but you feigned exhaustion from all the extracurricular drama club work you've been doing to get ready for winter break, plus the college application course you signed up for, all those practice essays on what makes you stand out from the herd. You also said you'd gotten your period because it always embarrasses Dad, and sure enough, he said it was okay for you to stay home before Beth had a chance to object. If you think about it, you can see them at the movie theater now. You've always been good at looking into places where you aren't actually present. You used to think it was just that vivid imagination teachers cited on all of your report cards, but you're not so sure anymore. It seems so real sometimes you wonder if maybe you do move through time and space, like astral projection or something crazy. Anyway, there they are, the 3 of them sitting together in the middle row toward the center where Beth likes to sit. Before Beth, you and Dad always sat in the back and he'd say, just like the cool kids do. Sometimes he'd tell you about the dates he'd go on with your mom when they were in high school. Benny and June, A Nightmare Before Christmas, True Romance. How they'd put their feet up on the seats in front of them and share a large cherry Coke. Interview with a Vampire, Ed Wood, Heavenly Creatures. They'd mix Junior Mints with popcorn to get that salty, sweet, buttery mint combo of flavors. Reality Bites, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Natural Born Killers. Dad sits between Beth and Oliver with a tub of popcorn on his lap, and the lavender light from the previews flickers across their faces. Beth is probably passing out the natural wet wipes she carries in her purse that smell like oregano and wet dog. She'll say something like, "I wish Eve had come," or "I hope Eve is feeling better." She's worried Dad will stop loving her if she doesn't keep this up, this act she performs where she claims to love you like one of her own. She calls you her bonus daughter too, never uses step. You should see the reaction she gets from the other moms. They act like she's Mother Teresa or something, as if a stepdaughter is the end of the world, a death sentence. When you pointed this out in therapy 2 weeks ago, Beth shrugged and looked at her hands, which she keeps folded in her lap, as if she's afraid of what they might do. And then she said, "I just want Ollie to feel like he has a normal family where everyone belongs. And this is where you don't disagree with her. You're just not delusional." For a second, you allow yourself to study your 5-year-old half-brother as you imagine him sitting there on his booster seat at the Cineplex in the new shopping mall. Oliver's eyes are magnified by the Coke bottle lenses he has to wear to correct his lazy eye. The glasses strapped to his head so he won't lose them. SpongeBob jumping around the black strip of thick elastic band. His ears stick out and you hate the fact you call him Dumbo sometimes. He's skinny like you are, the kind of skinny that can't gain weight, the kind of skinny that will get him called weak. And he's got the same almond-shaped eyes as you do, the same reddish-brown hair, even if yours is black from a bottle. He's excited to see the new Star Wars movie, even though you told him they all suck now. And his crooked smile makes his dimples nearly poke all the way through his chubby cheeks, as if someone stuck him there with a needle. He's your little brother, so of course you think he's cute because you love him, but you see all the strikes against him, all the flaws the mean kids will target. The years of being bullied yet to come if it hasn't already started. Kindergarten was when you first became other, the girl without a mommy. The girl with the perpetually uneven pigtails your dad wrestled with every morning until he gave up and you got the bad pixie cut. The girl who ate grilled cheese with tomato soup from a can for dinner too much. It just got worse the older you got, especially when some genius decided you should skip the 4th grade, convinced your dad it would be for the best, in the long run, they said. You contemplate the empty seat beside Ollie. Imagine what it'd be like to sit there, to hold his hand if he does get scared, which he probably will, to be the kind of big sister you'd wished for. But then you look at the actual girl in the glass across from you in the bathroom to remember who you are and why you stayed home. Split and divide. Except for the makeup, she's dressed like a boy, but you figure it's okay to embrace your inner goth because goth was big in the 90s when everything was better. The 90s when you should have been alive. The 90s where you belong. The 90s when your mom was a teenager, when she was goth too. Only according to her diaries, her friends all called themselves death rockers instead, which you love so much. The idea of rocking death, none of this wishy-washy emo crap. Your mom was hardcore. The hair is hard to get right, and it being black now doesn't do you any favors. Until you can find the perfect wig, you've taken to slicking it back with lots of product like how he wore it the night he went to prom. Still, you're worried people will think you've gotten the boys confused, when really you know everything about them. You know them better than they even knew themselves. If only you'd been alive at the time, been Elle's girlfriend and ours close friend, then maybe everything would be different. You started binding even though nobody 00 said it was fucking hot when you didn't, said it was gender bending and screw anything straight. But then Harris Forever and NB Killa 666 called him a fag, and the one meme started to circulate where someone had photoshopped nobody 00's profile picture to look like he had hanged himself. Then Nobody 00 stopped posting anything. He didn't even comment on your pictures or videos anymore, and you almost stopped participating in the private Reddit and Tumblr groups, only to find you couldn't stay away. You are addicted. It's the only place people notice you. Hashtag MBK forever. So here you are again on Cosplay Saturday, wearing the Wrath t-shirt you made using the iron-on letters you got for Christmas a year ago, and the black cargo pants you scored from the Goodwill by the freeway where the palm trees look dead. You lifted the trench coat from the costume rack after rehearsal last night at school, but the combat boots you ordered from Poshmark haven't come yet. You'll have to film yourself from the waist up because your Converse don't fit the part and being barefoot is more comfortable. You still don't have his tech DC-9 because of all the bans and strict gun laws and the fact you're a minor for another 2 months, but you've improvised. To recreate the look, you used one of your dad's sock garters as the shoulder holster and a water pistol you found in your brother's closet, which surprised you because Beth doesn't let him have toy guns, not even a G.I. Joe, and you realize that's why it was wrapped in an old beach towel. That even Ollie has his secrets too, that he has more potential than you give him credit for, but you took it anyway. Then you made the clip out of cardboard and wrapped the whole thing in black gaffer tape, also appropriated from a rehearsal for Singing in the Rain, the current stage production your school is doing, where you're practically doing all of the behind-the-scenes work. While you get that part of your job is to literally blend in with the shadows, to wear all black and just disappear like you always do anyway, it'd still be nice if just one of them could learn your name or use it. You used to wonder why anyone would ever put glass marbles in a vase and call it decor, but now you use the marbles in the vase your stepmonster arranged on the bathroom counter to hold your selfie stick in place. And really, you can't think of a better setup that isn't actually designed for such an operation. You position your phone just so before you cue the playlist you've titled The Nobodies, and the first song is ready to go. Pumped Up Kicks, one of those earworm one-hit wonders. The band's been backpedaling lately in the media about what the song really means, like that's the only reason they're not topping the charts anymore. And you think about Harris Forever, who's always going on about how triggered trigger culture makes him feel. Quickly, you practice the closing move where you use your pointer finger as a gun in tandem with the dance you've been choreographing all month, as inspired by Nancy Sinatra, who Quentin Tarantino turned you onto via the Kill Bill movies you worship at the altar of. You tried again and again to draw the gaffer tape gun instead of relying on your finger, but 50% of the time the makeshift clip got caught on the holster, which wasn't sexy, so you settled on this alternative. You leave that gun holstered as a part of your costume and shoot 3 imaginary targets with your finger in a fluid motion of flipping your wrist in 3 different directions. Each time you point, you shuffle through the lineup of people who have hurt you over the years. Pop, pop, pop. Beth pops up more often than not, but so does Charity Paez. You keep your thumb erect, and to mark the end of the performance, you blow pretend smoke from your fingertip. You do this now to confirm you're as ready to shoot this video as you will ever be. Then you take a deep breath, draw the air from outside your body into your lungs and let it fill your belly, like Miss Zelia tells everyone to do during warm-ups at rehearsals. You even pull it through your arms and legs, feel it suck in through the top of your head, and then slowly, slowly you exhale. When you hit record, he appears again. You can see him in the mirror smiling his senior photo smile at you. He's sitting behind you on the tank of the toilet like it's a park bench or something, and his boots are resting on the toilet lid, your stepmom decorated with seahorse decals, the same shade of teal as the marbles in the vases, teal accents that pop because both the bath mat and the shower curtain are the same color, whereas everything else is a virginal white you're scared of. Just before you hit play for the music, he winks at you, and he's not just a picture anymore. He says, if only Miss Zelia could see you, she'd make you the star of the show. You're still facing the mirror because it helps keep you grounded when you do the routine, but you also know he'll disappear if you look at him directly. His reflection looks your reflection in the eye, and he says, lights, camera, action, and it's showtime. Even though it came out in 1989, you've memorized every single line in the Heathers because that's where it all began. Quintessential to the 90s, it served as a prophecy of all to come, minus the smartphones and social media. Winona Ryder is 1/3 of the triple goddess you worship that includes Juliette Lewis and Courtney Love. It's the first day of 2019, and you have the house all to yourself, which means the yearly ritual should be perfect. You're up in the crawl space attic again, kneeling before the pop-up altar you made from your mom's old trunk, the ready-made shrine where all you have to do is lift the lid. The built-in tray both protects her stuff below and serves as the surface for placing the 3 tall votive candles you're lighting now. You decoupaged each one with the likeness of each goddess. Veronica is pictured first, her face smudged with soot and framed by a helmet of her almost black hair, as electrified by the very explosion she used to light the cigarette she's sucking on. She gets a gold glitter frame, and written in black Sharpie, the caption reads, "You're an unscrewed up reaction to a screwed up situation." Then there's Mallory as bride. It took you nearly forever to locate and cut out all the letters to make the caption in the style of ransom letters. For all eternity until you and I die. Rattlesnake's X-Acto knife from National Geographic's to Ouroboros her. For Courtney, last but not least, a close-up from the doll parts video you captured via screenshot where her red mouth pops like candy. Red nail polish for her frame, red Sharpie to write, "I love him so much, it just turns to hate." Winona is 1/3 triple goddess because, duh. Juliette because of natural born killers, of course. And Courtney because she's the queen of grunge. Even if she did go and get Kurt killed, you know how much love hurts. She just wanted them to be together forever. On the inside of the trunk's lid, you've stuck black carpet tacks to each of the 2 top corners, then strung a line of black embroidery thread between them. Using one of the miniature silver clothespins you shoplifted from Michael's, you've hung a black and white photo of your mom in the middle. You are careful to protect the 8x10 print. It was taken when she was your age. Barefoot and wearing a gauzy white Gunny Sacks dress, she poses in front of a concrete cemetery angel so its wings become her wings. The Rockies rise up behind her. Snow-capped guardians, the composition is absolute perfection. The ornate iron spikes of the fence to her left rising into the arched gate. The willow on the other side weeps over the crumbling tombstones that punctuate the uneven ground as they all face eternity. You've laid out the offerings already. A clove cigarette from the head shop by the beach. A can of Jolt Cola you had to order from Amazon. All the sugar and twice the caffeine. A tube of black lipstick you bought from Hot Topic. And a caramella candy bar because Dad says your mother craved them the whole time she was pregnant with you. This is the New Year's Day ritual. You put your earbuds in as you fully settle into the kneeling position that is proper for the praise and the prayers to come. You play a game you call the Spotify Oracle, where you select shuffle for the playlist you've dedicated to your mother, all the songs you know she listened to and loved, plus all the songs she never got to hear in the flesh, songs you know she would have loved just as much as you do. When shuffle selects just like heaven, it's one more sign from beyond the veil, a message you receive by holding your hands up in revelation, palms out and fingers spread like rays on a star. Every day it becomes more and more clear what it is that you are meant to do.
Keep playing now, beautiful boy. I can still hear you make beautiful noise. In the darkness, my glass is raised up high. friends away.